Hello and welcome in our open community call on open source technology development for publishing. I'm Cora Projets. I'm a community manager here at eLife, and I'll be facilitating this call. This is our third call where presenters working on software projects for the benefit of the research community volunteer on the agenda to update the community on their progress and invite feedback or support from others. We hope the call, as much as an overview of current initiatives, will also serve as an opportunity to start new conversations and hopefully collaborations. So thanks again to everybody who put themselves forward to talk. I would like to invite everybody to just join to share with us today what was your primary reason for joining the call. Please have a look at the little poll that should have just popped up on your screen. And if you can take half a minute to tick the option that relates to you, that would be very helpful. Right, I can see the votes are coming in. Excellent, 100% voted. That's fine. So let me close the poll and share the results. So as you can see, most people are here to listen to others' updates, but there is also some who are updating on their own work and want to connect with others. Let me now explain how this will work. As I said, presenters have volunteered through the open agenda, and here is the link so you can all join us there as well if you so wish at the moment. I would like you to refer to the agenda throughout the meeting so that you can type your questions or comments on there as well. It would be great if someone wanted to volunteer to take notes, and please use the chat box on the right-hand side to tell us if you'd like to be taking notes for everybody in the call, and the volunteers obviously can switch throughout the call as well. So each of our speakers will have 5 minutes to give their updates, and each presentation will be followed by 2 minutes for questions. As I said, please write your questions on the open agenda. If you have any problems with accessing or using that, you can also raise your hand through the right-hand side tool bar of the GoToMeeting, and we'll be able to see that you want to raise your hand. So you can also, using the open agenda, you can introduce yourself and say hello and share your thoughts during the call, as I said, in the chat as well as under each of the subjects. We're looking for volunteers to take notes. I mentioned that already. And if you want to share a project and didn't get a chance to add yourself to the agenda already, please put your update at the bottom underneath the current presentations, and we'll see whether we are able to get to your presentation, or if perhaps people will see that just as a non-verbal update today, and we may invite you to speak in the next call, which would most likely be in February. If any of this is unclear, please use the chat box on your right-hand side to let us know. And as we go through the presentations, I will try and assist you if you need any support. After each presentation, we'll have a couple of minutes for discussion. Please use the agenda or the raise your hand button if you wish to speak in person, and I can unmute you if you raise your hand. Now to the speaker. We'll ask every speaker in their brief 5 minutes to introduce themselves and present their work. We'll allow up to 2 minutes for questions after each presentation, but as I said, please continue to ask your questions throughout the meeting on the agenda as well, so the speakers can get back to you in writing. So now on to Jeannie, who can tell us about her project, Vivo.
Hello, this is Jenny Pannebecker. I'm Director of Research Collaboration and Engagement at Virginia Tech at our university libraries. But I am also a representative from Virginia Tech to the leadership group of Vivo. So Vivo is a large project produced by many people. And I'm here today just to bring it up and let you all know a little bit about it, and give you some places where you can get more information if you're interested in this project. So at Virginia Tech, we're working on creating an instance of Vivo, which we'll call Collab VT. And for us, this will focus on being a profile system for our researchers, so that is open to the public, where people can find their publications, find experts from Virginia Tech on a given topic, and be able to connect with them and see how they're connected within the organization as well. So on the Vivo site, which is just durospace.org/Vivo, you can learn more about Vivo and the partners. At the Vivo site, you also have some more information about the community and how you can connect within the community. Our members are shown here, and you can see example sites. So Vivo is focused on allowing different organizations a way to add information about people and accomplishments and things that they're working on, so that others can explore that organization. One example here is the USDA science collaboration. Another example is CU Experts from the University of Colorado Boulder. If you become a member of Vivo, you also have representation via the leadership steering group, and you can also join as a committer if you're working on the development of the project. To get more information about Vivo in detail, if you go to the wiki, then you'll be able to take a short tour, get technical specs, and see more FAQs. Right now, Vivo has just produced a product direction statement for 2019. It's undergoing final approval right now, but these are some examples of things we'll be looking at for developing over the year. And I'll end on the news page for Vivo, where you can get updates for Vivo here. The main benefit of Vivo is that it's a member-supported open source software producing linked open data for semantic web. And it includes an ontology that represents scholarship and research of all kinds that's community edited, so that ontology is being updated as new forms of research are produced. And at this point, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or note them down so that I can get back to you with more details.
Right. Thank you, Virginia. So if anybody is unsure how to ask your questions, then please go ahead and use the hand raising button on the GoToWebinar control panel. I'm just checking on the agenda, but I don't see us having received any questions already. So if you have any questions for Virginia, then please put them on the agenda. Actually, Cecilia Donnelly has used the chat box on the right-hand side, which is perfectly fine, and is asking, who do you expect to use Vivo at Virginia Tech?
Okay, at Virginia Tech, we're starting with faculty, and we're connecting it to our instance of symplectic elements, which is a system where you can pull information from other university systems, like our personnel system. We use Banner, our grants and sponsored projects system, also our teaching information, also through Banner. So what that means is that for faculty, they get a lot of this information, well, some of this information added automatically. The courses they're teaching, some of the grants that they've put through, and then Elements also connects out to scholarly databases such as Web of Science, Scopus. It connects to ORCID researcher profiles and can pull in information about presentations and publications that they've done. So this means we have faculty profiles that are preloaded with automated source information. The faculty can then curate those, add things manually, and this will feed into the public system of Vivo. So we pull from the Elements API into our Vivo instance and then can show publicly what the faculty choose to select to show publicly, if that sounds good. So basically it will show profiles of what faculty do at Virginia Tech. As an example from Colorado CU experts, if someone wanted to search for people involved with nutrition, then they can search through the system and find people in a given research area, for example. So this would give, for example, industry partners or public community members who want to learn, who want to connect with someone on a given topic at Virginia Tech, or other research institutes or organizations could find collaborators through Virginia Tech through this kind of profile system.
Thank you. Yep, thank you, Virginia. So if that's okay, we'll now move on to Adi Varma, who will tell us about the Open Reuse project. So Adi, just to warn you, you're now going to become a presenter.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Adi. I'm a co-founder of Profisa and we are working on reproducibility challenge based out of India, and we have built a couple of other tools which are being used by publishers as of now. But it's reproducibility is the biggest problem that we have in science, where people say that it's very hard to reproduce. And when it comes to the reasons why most of the published science is not easily reproducible, there are multiple factors, like there are differences at times, subtle invariant experimental setting methods, and even the methodological details are insufficient so that someone be able to easily reproduce something or not. And there might be some insufficient technical progress. So there are a lot of issues that narrow down to the problem of reproducibility, and we don't know what exactly causes this. So that's where we thought that research does deserve a reuse feedback, where people let us know how they're actually reusing the published research, if at all they're using. And you can already see the experiences of researchers who are talking about the hardness of using reproduce. So these are some tweets that we collected. So you can see them on our Open Reuse website, where people publicly shout out that we don't know what's missing in this article and it's very hard to reproduce something. So we built this Open Reuse platform just to enable researchers to share their reuse feedback, if at all they have been reusing something. So Open Reuse is a movement, and it's also a platform, an initiative to promote sharing of individual researchers' attempts and experiences to reuse the research which is already published. And the reuse efforts can be shared in terms of if they gain some new insights while using or reproducing, if they have made some alterations while reproducing. The alterations might be just changes in the chemicals that you're using or the antibodies that you're using, any alteration. And you can also report instances where you just simply reproduced, and you can also report. So let's say if you're not able to reproduce something, what's that missing? What do you think that's missing, which is not provided by the author, so that this message can be shared with the authors and this can be finally improved. And I can show you some real reuse instances which people are doing right now. So this is a dashboard of a profile of a researcher who is doing this right now. So you can see that. So this researcher is trying to do some alteration to already published research. So this is the published research article in which he is trying to reproduce an immunoprecipitation method, and where the user says yes, he is able to reproduce, and he also made some alterations. And the alterations he did is he made some changes to the chemicals on XPBS, NP40 detergents and all, which are different from the actual published article. So you can also so people can also share the data. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to crowdsource the problem of reproducibility. So the ideology is, so by leaving a reuse feedback, they can contribute to reproducibility of already published research artifacts, and also by letting others know how they have been able to reproduce, they can facilitate reproducibility of the same. So let's say if author didn't mention the detailed protocol how to exactly reproduce a particular experiment, but now a researcher who is trying to reuse that could figure out how to exactly reproduce this thing. He spent almost a month or 2 months of time to figure out the exact protocol, so he can crowdsource the reproducibility challenge. So that's what we are trying to do. And the way how we are trying to recognize these efforts is through open use badges, which I don't want to stress a lot. So these are badges which shows that author contributions towards reuse, which basically differentiates the categories into which he is reporting reuse, like whether he's reporting new insights or improvements or just reproducible attempts, or any alterations that he's doing. And and the efforts that he's trying to facilitate reuse will also be recognized through a facilitator badge, which basically show how he's helping others to reuse or reproduce the same things that which he has already done. So as said, so this platform is completely open source, and we are looking for community feedback and also any kind of help that I can get through the open source community to build initial case studies. And I'm done with my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Hi, yes, thank you, Adi. So we're waiting to see if there are questions being raised. Vincent is giving us some feedback that it's looking good. Does anyone else have any questions for Adi or some comments about the open reuse app that he's just demonstrated? If there aren't any questions immediately, then Adi, I hope you will be fine with me switching now to the next person, which will be Anisha Keshavan. I'm really sorry if I pronounced it really badly. So Anisha will tell us about the abstract.
My name is Anisha. I'm a researcher at the University of Washington, and I primarily am interested in studying the brain. And there's this really great open data set called the Healthy Brain Network, where they're trying to study mental health, and they're scanning MRIs of children so that we can look at how brain imaging features can tell us about mental health and its progression. The problem, though, with scanning kids in an MRI scanner is that they move a lot. And so you get actually really bad quality images sometimes, and you can't use this in your science. So I made a little crowdsourcing app called Braindr, and I went on Twitter and I tweeted, "Are you at work but feel like playing Tinder? Why not play Braindr instead?" And help neuroscientists rate the quality of brain images. And so basically the idea is if you see a good quality image, you swipe right, and if you see a bad quality image, you swipe left. And this actually got like insanely popular. And here's a demo of it. You can just swipe right, and here's an example of a bad quality image where you see a lot of like blurriness between the brain tissue. So you can swipe left. And so this was really popular, and then I started thinking about, well, now I need to do some background research into mental health. And so I was thinking that it would be really great to at least get an idea of the distribution of sample sizes for various mental health studies. So for example, what you're seeing here in abstract is a scientific abstract on a study of autism. And everything here you see highlighted are numbers. And your goal is to just click on the number that refers to the number of participants in this autism study. And this information isn't easy to automatically extract because people report sample sizes in different ways. And this is true for a lot of other types of metadata we would need for meta-analyses. So with abstract, it's the same idea as Braindr. You tap on something and then you hit submit. And it loads the next abstract. And so we had 1,700 abstracts on abstract about autism and neuroimaging. We actually got this annotated within 3 days. So we also have a leaderboard, so you can see there are people who have played this game a lot. The same app code can actually be used to create other sorts of annotations. So this is Whalder. The idea here is that oceanographers at the University of Washington are trying to create a training data set of whale sounds from a hydrophone that's 100 miles off the coast of Seattle. And a hydrophone is basically a sound recorder. And Whalder, I don't know if you're able to hear this, but when I click, you can actually hear a 5-second sound clip. And what you see here is a spectrogram of that same clip. And so you would swipe left if it's not a whale and swipe right if it is a whale. So there might be some dolphin activity here. So maybe we swipe right. Oh, here there might be a whale. Anyway. So all of these apps are kind of being aggregated under this overall kind of code template called Swipes for Science. So the idea for Swipes for Science is that you're able to create an abstract type app for annotation of text, but you're also able to create a Brander app for the annotation of images, and you're also able to create a Whalder type app for the annotation of sounds. And so what I'm looking for really right now is, first of all, any scientists who have big data labeling needs and are interested in using citizen science. Our goal is to make this app very easy to configure so that you don't necessarily need to know web technology or DevOps to launch one of these things, and you can just tweet it on your Twitter account or send an email to your friends with a link to your game. The other thing I'm looking for is any developers who are interested. We are really focused on creating a really good user interface for this. I mean, Brander was really simple, and I think that's why people enjoyed it so much. You could also like win badges and awards. So we tried to make like a gamified type template for Swipes for Science. So yeah, if you're a developer, please join us. This is our GitHub repo. And if you're a scientist who has data labeling needs, please contact me. And I think I'm done.
Great, thank you, Anisha. So I wonder whether there are any questions for you. I can see that there are many, many notes about your presentation. So I can see that there is a question from somebody. Are you planning to extend abstract to crowdsource information other than sample size? It seems the question is always the same.
Yes, right now the question is always the same. So this was a prototype that was built like within 2 days at the eLife Innovation Sprint back in May. The idea though is inside Swipes for Science that you're able to kind of configure the app so you can extract different types of information. But it's still very much a work in progress. So if you have any ideas or any kind of use cases that I should know about, please let me know, and we can try to like work it into the plan.
Excellent. Thank you, Anisha. So I don't see any more questions being raised immediately. So if that's okay with you, we'll now move to speak with Victor Venema from the University of Bonn. Victor, you can expect any minute now a little pop-up on your screen as you will be changing to becoming a presenter.
Perfect. So my name is Victor Venema, and as you can hear, I'm Dutch. But I nowadays work as a climatologist in Bonn, Germany. And as a climatologist, it's really clear to me how important the scientific literature is, rather than all those blogs who are complaining about climate science, and also how important peer review is. So that got me thinking, how can we do this better? And nowadays in the age of internet, dissemination is really easy. That's no longer a reason to have scientific journals. What the publishers still have is their reputation. And actually that reputation is built upon the work we do. So I think if we want to improve the system, we should separate the publishing and the review. And that is why I have started to build an open post-publication peer review system, which I call Grassroots Journals. And you see the first page here on your screen. The idea is to really review all articles in the field, not just the bad ones, not just collect the nice ones, but really review everything like we are used to with normal journals. Make sure that every article gets a review. If we then go to a specific review, this is one example. I started a journal in my own field, homogenization of climate data. This is one article where we have the title and abstract to make it discoverable. Then you will find a synthesis by 1 or 2 editors who summarized all the reviews and comments which are made. Then you go to the reviews by my colleagues, and you can also comment on the reviews, and you can of course comment on the article. Everyone can do that. So there are different comment types. You can write such a synthesis if you're an editor. You can write reviews. You can write a general comment, a specific comment on a smaller part of the article. You can also immediately contact the editors with a message, and you can add links to blog posts or reproductions or that kind of thing. So every article gets one page and should have 2 editors. In this case, it was just me because we just started. The editors would invite reviews to ensure that all the articles are reviewed. They also moderate the comments. That makes it possible to allow for anonymous comments. And of course, the editors write the synthesis. And I expected those journals would have a quite limited topic. So in my case, homogenization of climate data is just a few dozen papers a year. And so every group of volunteers can handle this. Then the journal, every journal also has a community page with information on conferences, email lists, and other communication, things like a list of Twitter accounts. So in this system, the editors are quite powerful. So to limit their power, it should be really easy to copy a journal so that if people are unhappy with how the journal is run, they can start their own and simply copy all the reviews. The reviews have a Creative Commons attribution license, and the software of the entire system itself is also on an open source license so that everyone can contribute. A major next step would be to have an API so that it would be really easy to share all the reviews. And yeah, I'm hoping for collaborators and people to spread the idea, to give me feedback. I'm open for questions.
Great. Thank you, Victor, for sharing your update. I just had one question myself. So you mentioned something about some of the comments becoming being possible to be made anonymously. But are the kind of the reviews, are they meant to be fully transparent? Is the identity of the reviewers known?
In case of the reviews, the editor should know who made the review. That's why so there's also difference between the reviews and the general comments, which could be just as long as a review in principle about the entire paper, but only the reviews where you make a quantitative assessment of the article, the editor should know who it is. I don't think everyone needs to know, but at least the editor should know who made the comment to assess any conflicts of interests and to assess the expertise of the reviewer.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Victor at the moment? Again, just a reminder, you can use the hand-raising tool on the GoToWebinar if you'd like to be unmuted and ask your question in person. Since I don't see anything else popping up, then let's move on to the next speaker, and that will be Konrad Hinsen from Orléans in France. So just let me find you on the list, Konrad. Sorry, whilst I'm trying to locate Konrad on the list of potential speakers, we had one question from Adrienne Canino about the latest of the abstract that was discussed. Is there a way to connect open source data to the articles in Grassroots?
Yes, also that can simply be done by adding a link. And I'm hoping that when the publishing system is transformed this way, and the journals are no longer that powerful, you could also simply publish articles, algorithms, and processing frameworks and that kind of thing, without having to write an article about it to make it into something like an official publication. You could review here everything.
Right, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I can't see Konrad Hinsen being with us today, so maybe he, for some reason, didn't make it to the meeting in the end. Konrad, if you're here, but just appearing under a different name, please could you just write in the chat box what name did you use to register for the webinar? In the meantime, we will move on to the next speaker. So Vincent Turner will tell us about Plodit. Okay, Vincent, I'm going to unmute you now. Hello, Vincent.
All right. Hello.
Hi. Is there any chance that you might be joining us on your mobile?
No, it's on my laptop.
Oh.
Is there something wrong? Or?
I just don't seem to be able to give you an option to present your slides or screen.
Well, yeah, it's not that much of a problem. I don't really have slides or anything. If I'm audible,
Okay.
then that's enough. So
that's great. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to present Plotted, which is a project that actually it was conceived of at the ELOF Innovation Sprint in May, just like Abstract. But I only started on it this week with support of eLife. And it's a project basically that we initiated when we were brainstorming a solution to the question, can we find a way to recognize the value of scientific content regardless of the journal it is published in? So we wanted to alleviate the pressure to keep publishing in mostly paywall journals. So currently, the value of scientific content is mostly evaluated by looking at the name of the journal it is published in, right? But meanwhile, more and more fields see more research getting published as preprints, and even with preprints, peers can still look at your research, and they do, but they use their own judgment to see, well, can I trust this research? So we were thinking, what if we make this judgment explicit? What if we, there's the the Innovation Sprint Roundup. So what if we make it explicit when someone has read a preprint and has used their own judgment and found that it was reliable research? What if they could share it with potential other readers? So we thought of this relatively lightweight mechanism where we make this small widget that preprint servers can embed next to the research they host. That allows a researcher to authenticate with their ORCID to endorse research identified by its DOI. So we're currently working with the Center for Open Science to test its viability. Again, it's really early stages, so hopefully you'll hear more about this in the future. But for now, the main ask is if people have feedback for this or other questions. And if there are people here who host research or data or code, do get in touch and see if we can find a way to collaborate. Yeah, that's basically it. Are there any questions? I can't see any myself.
Right, yep. I can't see any questions at the moment either. There are some notes appearing, but I don't see any more questions. So clearly that was very clear. Thank you. In that case, I think let's move on to the next person. The next speaker will be Neil Jefferies from Data to Paper. Neil, I'm going to quickly find you and make you presenter so you can share your update with us today. And I think Neil has a couple of different updates, but let's start with Data to Paper first.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, I'm on a fairly dodgy connection, so I was going to do a demo, but I don't think I've got enough bandwidth to do that, so I'm going to just bring up web pages. So the first thing I want to talk about is a project called Data to Paper. It's open source based, but really it's about a service. And the idea is to really, if you've got a data set in a data repository that's DataCite compliant and has good quality metadata, then using that metadata effectively to fill in publisher submission forms so you don't have to. At the moment, we're targeting data papers specifically because they have, being newer articles, they have much more structured metadata requirements. And actually, some analysis work done at RDA had established that the majority of data paper publishers actually require metadata that almost exactly maps to what DataCite provides. So the idea is it's a cloud-based service that connects a DataCite compliant repository to a data paper publisher. And it's effectively a many-to-many connection, which is why it sits in the cloud. And the idea is, as a repository or a publisher, you only connect a data to paper once, and it then manages the workflow. So essentially, you start with your data deposited in a repository, and if you're the creator of that data set, then you have a button on the repository that allows you to automate the data paper publication process. Our partners at the moment are F1000 Research and Welcome and Elsevier and CERN in the form of Zenodo and Figshare in terms of just getting the idea up and running. We've had some support from JISC, the Sloan Foundation, Microsoft Research to develop this. And at the moment, we're really looking to kick off a pilot with a couple of communities of researchers which basically have well-defined repositories for putting their stuff in and well-defined publication patterns. The target communities at the moment they're really working with are basically the Biostudies portal as a gateway into the ENBOL EBI resources, and also the Deep Carbon Observatory. So at the moment we're in the process of plumbing in links to journals, plumbing in links to those things, and then starting to test the workflow in Anger. Second thing I want to talk about is a protocol called SWORD, which is now on version 3. We're working on version 3 at the moment. And it's basically a specification for machine-to-machine transfer of digital objects. Version 1 was created about 10 years ago. It's supported by a large number of repositories, and it was originally focused on the automated deposit of publications into repositories. SWORD v3 is taking a more expansive view and is really starting to focus much more on the automated deposit of data, or rather non-paper type objects. We're going to be doing a session at RDA in a couple of weeks' time, and our partners in terms of developing a reference implementation will be the Zenodo/Invenio guys and Archive in conjunction with NII in Japan. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is something called the Oxford Common File Layout. And this is really about the long-term preservation of digital objects of all sorts. And the idea is it's a specification that describes an application-independent approach to storing digital objects in file systems and object stores, which includes things like versioning, it includes complex objects, it includes all sorts of metadata. But the idea is it's human readable and it's also machine parsable, but it's persistent in a way that's independent of application level code. That we're working in conjunction with Cornell, Emory, Stanford, and Duraspace. It's now in alpha, so feel free to sign on, and it's all on GitHub, and make comments. We have a number of repositories who are interested in implementing it, either as a backend or as an export format. But the idea is it's a standardized way of transferring digital objects. So any questions about those, or any chance to go into those in more detail at a future date, I'll be glad to take them. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Neil. Are there any questions for Neil at the moment? Not that I can see. Let's move on to our next speaker. Tim Bussey and Sarah Memar are with us to talk about mouse bytes. Tim, I'm going to now make you a presenter, if that's okay. So you should see a pop-up on your screen to that effect. That will allow you to unmute yourself and present your screen.
Thank you. We're neuroscientists, specifically behavioral neuroscientists. So we're interested in how the brain works and what goes wrong with the brain in diseases like Alzheimer's disease. We're particularly interested in cognition, things like memory and attention and so forth. And you probably know that mouse models of disease, for example, are used widely in behavioral neuroscience. That's what our database is for, as we'll explain. In behavioral neuroscience, more generally, there are databases that exist for example, human neuroimaging. These allow people to share data and to recombine and reanalyze data in the way that Adi was talking about earlier. But sort of surprisingly, because it's called behavioral neuroscience, there are no, as far as we know, functioning databases for behavior, and certainly not for the mouse. So, part of the reason for this is because the way memory and so forth is tested in the mouse varies widely from lab to lab, and perhaps as a consequence of this, the field of behavioral neuroscience, and particularly mouse behavioral neuroscience, has been accused of a lack of replicability. Again, the sort of thing that Adi was talking about earlier. But we think that there may be a solution, that there's a method for testing cognition and behavior in the mouse that's now reached kind of a critical mass. There are several hundred labs using it. It's called the touchscreen method. Basically, it's a mouse solving cognitive problems on a computer screen, like think a mouse working on an iPad. And because it's fully computerized, and because it's standardized, and because the data come off of this piece of apparatus in the same way every time, no matter where you're doing your experiment, in Korea or Australia or Canada, it really lends itself to databasing. And so we're trying to bring behavior into the information age by providing a database for people to deposit all of their data from touchscreen testing. I'll let Sarah describe the database to you, but one thing I wanted to say is that we noted that a theme of this discussion is publication, and that's something that we kind of know what we're doing with the data and the database and analysis and so forth. One thing that we're a little out of our depths about, perhaps, is that end of things, the publication. Will journals, for example, require people to deposit their data in the database in order to publish, and this sort of thing? How do we go about talking to journals about this? So if anyone has any feedback on those kinds of questions, we'd really appreciate it. So over to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Tim, for the introduction. Actually, I'm going to describe the mouse part. This slide shows the overview of our proposed open access platform, which is the web application connected to the open access database. Our main focus in this stage is on touchscreen data and touchscreen publication, and having such information in one coherent platform in order to increase the collaboration among researchers, integrate such data with external sources, and facilitate data sharing and data analysis. These are the steps followed in this project. At the first level, we have the data acquisition. Cognitive behavioral data can be collected using technology. Such technology is currently being used in over 300 labs around the world in order to automate multiple cognitive tasks and generate standard data which is suitable for investigating cognition in rodents. But the main gap is that currently there is no mechanism to provide quality control for such data and gather them together in an open access database. That's why in MouseBytes at the first level, we have a real-time quality control procedures. So once the data are getting uploaded to the database, they are checked against some quality control rules in order to store valid, accurate, and complete data into the database. And once we have the data in the database, users can extract the data based on different search criteria, such as cognitive tasks, age of the animal, strange genotypes, and other fields. MouseBytes also provides interactive data visualization, so public data in MouseBytes can be visualized to communicate, compare, and validate the experimental results. And at the end, once the data is exported, we can apply any statistical tools to employ statistical techniques and machine learning techniques to transfer the data to knowledge. And here is the application. For example, it is the web applications, and the users just need the URL. The URL of our application is mousebytes.ca, and there are some pages open to everyone, such as Data Lab. I don't know why it is missed here. So this part belongs to Data Lab. Users can extract the data and export the data in CSV format, and also generate a unique link and share it with others. And also they can put it in the publication for reviewers. And also once the data is published, they can put the DOI of that publication to the data in MouseBytes. And also we have the data visualization, and there is also a space for searching different experiments available in MouseBytes. There are also some functionalities in MouseBytes that require authentication and authorization. For example, if the users want to create the experiment based on a specific cognitive task, they can first sign up, and after that they can log in and create the experiment and upload their files to the experiment. And as I said earlier, we have the quality control rules and data. If there is any issue with the data, they can still list up the errors in upload log page in MouseBytes. And there's also an option to handle the errors. For example, if there is any error about the QC quality control, they can handle that in the same application. And also, if there is any missing animal information, they can add it to the system. And there is also a space in the application for creating the animals, and then add the data of the animal to the application. Here we have our website, MouseBytes. For example, under Touchscreen tab, we have some public pages. These pages are open to everyone. You can explore the application, and if you have any question and feedback about our application, our email address is mousebytes@uwo.ca. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Tim and Sarah. I can't see any questions immediately for you about MouseBytes, but obviously anyone who would like to ask questions, please do so. As I said before, you can do that either through the open agenda or by raising your hand in the GoToWebinar control panel as well. I have, however, found in the chat box that I'm not sure if everybody has used. So on the right-hand side in the open agenda, there is a column for chat, and somebody's asked a question about one of the previous updates, which is data to paper sounded like a service that allows you to find the data a paper has used. Does anyone know if such a service exists? I presume Neil may have something to add about that. Neil, would you be able to answer the question?
Yeah. we very much about starting with the data and then producing a paper, but to close the loop, there's a service called Scolex, if you look it up, that basically scans, it's driven out of Crossref, but also OpenAir, that basically publishes pairings of links between journal article DOIs and datasite DOIs. So effectively pairing up citable links for data sets to papers. And we actually use that as part of our platform to effectively close the publication loop, to identify when a publication has arrived as a result of a data set that we have a link to. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you, Neil. And again, thank you for everyone who's been asking questions of our presenters today. Before we all go, I just wanted to ask you to try and respond to yet another little poll we had. I wonder whether many of you have actually joined our previous calls, or whether it was the first one for you. So if you can very quickly just choose the option that applies, now that would be very helpful. Right, okay, I can see that not everybody is still paying attention, but I'm very glad to see that some of you have attended previous calls, but I'm also really glad that we have such a great turnout of newcomers on our call. I've also just been alerted to the fact that we received some more questions on the open agenda. Okay, Stephanie is asking who is funding Mouse Bytes. Oh, sorry, it's Thomas, not Stephanie.
Hi, Thomas. The initial database was built with a grant from the Western Brain Foundation in Canada, and we've just got some more money from the CFREF, which is the Canada First Research Excellent Fund. But we need more. That's why we applied to the Wellcome Trust. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for responding to the question, and thank you everybody for joining today. I hope that you found the updates useful and that you'll continue joining our calls in the future. As I said, the next one will be in February, and kind of look out for the announcement on the eLife website and their events. Please continue asking questions and chatting on the open agenda, because that's what it's there for. Again, thank you very much for joining and responding to the polls and taking part in general.